So hi, welcome to another episode of Insights with NetSupport. My name is Mark Anderson. I'm the Head of Education at NetSupport, and you can find me on social media at ICT Evangelist. We've had some fantastic guests in recent weeks on Insights, and today is just like any other day. I'm so excited to bring my guest on to the podcast, the vlog, the show Insights with NetSupport right now. She's somebody that I've known for, I mean, maybe we'll have this conversation, but certainly at least a decade. She's someone who has always had the thoughts about impactful and useful and helpful technology right at the forefront of her thinking. She's a languages teacher by profession, but has held a whole host of different roles. She has an FRSA, if I can get it out right, and I say for her, that's for real, she's awesome. So without any further ado, let me bring her on so she can tell you a bit more about who she is, what she does, and some of her experience. It gives me great pleasure to welcome onto Insights with NetSupport, the one and only Laura Knight. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, thank you very much, Mark. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. I'm really excited about our conversation. I always come away from our conversations feeling like I've learned as much as I've shared, and probably a bit more in deficit than actual sharing in your directions. So I'm really excited to unpick some of your insights. But before we dive into those questions and the conversation and the topic of focus for the day, could you share a little bit about who you are and what you do, and some of your experiences in education, please?
Absolutely, delighted to. So yes, I'm Laura Knight, and it's lovely to be here. I've been in education for 20 years, and am by training a French teacher. So I have worked across the state and independent sectors in the UK, and spent a lot of time in sort of middle management roles as a head of department, that kind of thing. But then just over 10 years ago, made the move into digital learning in an official way, having been a less official but always committed geek in that space. I was head of sort of used to be called e-learning then, and then that sort of translated into director of digital learning, and have led on some really interesting projects at Berkhamsted, where I work now. Particularly thinking about one-to-one devices. We have a great deployment here that's worked really well and is now nice and mature, really well established and embedded in our school culture. I've also done quite a lot of work on things like learning platforms, digital learning, staff training, and also some more holistic work on digital wellbeing and online safeguarding too. So all of those are areas of interest. Not surprisingly, a lot of my work now focuses around AI. And I'm very fortunate to have fabulous experience now where I'm in school for part of the week teaching classes and involved in school life, but also part of the week I'm out in the world, public speaking, consultancy, advisory work, policy, that kind of thing. So I get to see all sorts of interesting case studies, opportunities for learning from other schools and other experts and colleagues who are doing awesome things. So I hope to bring some of that to our conversation today.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Laura. And it's really interesting that you're sort of making a similar sort of progression that I did quite a few years ago now. One of the really lovely things that I enjoyed when I first started, both still teaching and leading within schools, within my school, sorry, but also getting out to go and speak at events and learn with and from others, was that ability to take some great things back from the schools I was working at, and then because you see amazing practice wherever you go, don't you? And you get inspired from the event, you get to speak out and those sort of things. Is there anything you've seen or heard recently that has made you go, "Wow, that's amazing," and you thought about trying to bring back into your school?
So there is some really great thinking going on at the moment about AI. Now it's obviously it's a relatively new technology, and there's some really interesting thoughts around the best approaches to take. So I've been delighted to be in the same room as some very wise souls, sharing some really practical insights in this space, but also thinking big about possibilities. And so I would definitely mention people like Miles Berry and Rachel Evans, who both shared some fabulous stuff in rooms I've been in recently. I've also really enjoyed hearing from Professor Eddie Obeng, who's a bit of a rock star, and Tim Cook as well, who's got some really interesting insights, having come from working in government actually, and so it's got a sort of institutional approach that comes from outside education. So yeah, there's some really great thinking going on for sure, and a lot of what's happening right now is trying to adapt and explore what's happening across the education sector from beyond it, if you like. So yeah, as an example, I was really interested to hear what they're doing at Skinner's, where they're adapting some of the principles from IBM for education, which I thought was really interesting, just the way that they're approaching that whole I suppose, how do you create structure in a space that feels kind of wild and tangly, and so yeah, they're doing some really great thinking around that. That's Dr. Andrew Bev, so I'd recommend checking out what they're up to. So yeah, there's some great stuff going on for sure, but also there's quite a lot of thinking that has to happen at quite a small level about, well, how do we train our staff, how do we build exploration into what we're doing, and when is the right time to do that? In what order do we approach this? So that's more broadly thinking about innovation and change culture, that kind of thing in school too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll touch on change management, change culture as well, because I mean, one of the things that I found over the years is, whilst technology is amazing, often it's what happens between the sort of laptop and the chair that's the biggest issue rather than the technology. So I think that a conversation around that would be really interesting. But I wanted to just highlight something that I loved in what you shared there, Laura, because in your own right, you're a great thought leader, and I want to sort of jump onto your recent keynote to EdTech Europe in just a few moments. But what I love about you, Laura, is that you stand on the shoulders of giants, and you take the conversation further forward, but you don't actually forget to mention those people that you've worked with, the people you learn with, and all those sort of things. So hat dot and kudos to you for doing that, because there are a number of people
Oh, thank you.
in our space who don't do that. So
No,
it's
agreed. And I
lovely
think
to hear
it's
you
really
sort of shining a
important
light
that,
on amazing people.
yeah, I think it's really important that we value the collective in all that we do, and that so much of the learning that happens in our space, in our sector, is about absolutely being a magpie and accumulating useful tidbits of information from various different places, and then kind of multiplying and extrapolating. But it takes a village, in the same sense that it does with raising children. We all have to contribute and share, and if we're too busy trying to, I don't know, be a rock star about it, then you forget the fact that it is a collective, and that I think the most powerful thing we can do moving forwards with AI is to ensure that high quality sharing is at the heart of how we deliver on excellence in the sector. It's not going to be because of a tiny handful of people. It will be because we've all worked on it together.
Well, there's some more things we can dive into on that front about an event you're attending in a very near future later on in this conversation, Laura. But
Yes.
I wanted to talk about your recent keynote at EdTech Europe in Amsterdam. It was so lovely. I was unfortunately busy elsewhere, so I wasn't able to attend. I was quite a few miles away in the Far East when you were over there. But it was lovely to see how social media blew up. People saying so many lovely things.
Honestly,
And
I was blown away. Yeah.
whilst you say nice things about other people, clearly people are saying really nice things about you. So could you just give us a York Notes, as it were, version of your keynote, and sort of what were some of the sort of key takeaways? Because a lot of it resonated an awful lot with people. What were people sort of really interested in, Laura?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, first of all, thinking about EdTech Europe as an event, the first thing I wanted to say is how much I enjoyed it. It's always interesting when you go to something for the first time, and I'd not travelled to that event before. It's a relatively new one in the calendar in our sort of sector, in our space. And so I was really unsure of what it was going to be like. And having had some experiences at quite commercial events in the past where honestly the speakers are really just a bonus, and really it's all about the stands and everything, this was very much an event which focused on high quality inputs and really great contributions from across education, policy, academics, like teachers. There was a bit of everything. And so in terms of networking, in terms of the connections with people, it was absolutely magical and I loved it. So in my keynote, I had no concept really of how big the stage was going to be, and it was a big stage. Big stage. And so yeah, when I arrived, I was like, I'm going to be up there. Blimey. So that was wonderful. I spent some time thinking in quite a principled way, if you like. It was a little bit of philosophy about how we can approach artificial intelligence in a sort of capacity as school leaders, and how do we think about, how do we create space for and manage this potentially quite considerable change. And I was thinking about how we approach it in terms of the culture of innovation as a school, and actually to what extent is this a seismic change? You mentioned earlier about how do we measure how important a change is? Is this just another little blip on the sort of broader journey, or is this something that's really transformative? So I spent some time exploring that and gave school leaders some hooks to hang things on, I think, about conceptually how to think about AI. And how to consider it in terms of broader IT strategy, how to think about it in terms of teaching and learning and staff development, but also some of the gritty stuff around policy and managing pitfalls, which, you know, early doors in a new tech, one of the first things that will happen is you'll get your doomers and gloomers and you will get your evangelists, and then there's this sort of chasm in between, right? And so I wanted to fill that space with reason and wisdom and give people some meaningful places to start with their thinking.
That's brilliant stuff. Thank you very much, Laura. You touched upon a thing there, and this goes to something, viewers and listeners, that we were talking about before we actually started recording. And, you know, technology comes and goes, right? And some of it has a big impact and some of it doesn't. So if you think about the internet was a transformational new technology that still continues to have a huge impact on everything in our daily lives, from the notifications on our wrists to what we hear in our ears, to what we see on our televisions, and the way in which we collaborate and communicate, and all those different things. But other technologies over the years haven't really quite hit that same sort of mark. And yet, you know, marketers and people in the educational technology space will tell you that it is going to be the next big thing. And we've seen things like interactive whiteboards, AR, VR, iPad, all these different things that are going to change the way we do things forever. But often they fail to actually, you know, reach the mark, do they, Laura? So, AI. Do you think it's another AR, VR? Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love the technologies, but it hasn't really landed quite as largely as some of these companies might have had us believe. Is AI going to be a bit like that, an interactive whiteboard?
Well, yeah.
Or is it actually going to be transformational?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting question, Mark. So first of all, I'd like us to just think a little bit about some of those technologies which have come and go and been the next big thing in capital letters, and reflect on who told us that it was the next big thing and where those messages came from. And I think that we need to just take a little care about some of those messages. In the past, there has been a lack of agency and confidence in the education sector about investing in technology, and perhaps too much trust, dare I say, put into the hands of the marketers and the sales folk and the people who buy really big, expensive stands at Bett to convince you that this is the next big thing. I think that the balance is shifting, and increasingly there are many more savvy technologists working in schools, directors of IT with real vision, teachers with such a high level of skill and interest in this space, that no more are people going to just be passive about being sold to. So I think that's the first thing to say. Unfortunately, that still is the case in lots of spaces, but I think it is shifting. So in terms of the next big thing and being a marketer's dream, I don't think AI is that thing. I think it's much more profound than that. And I think it's going to become almost invisibly profound in the way that the internet now is. The idea of a school without broadband is bananas, isn't it? And yet it's not so very many years ago that would have been considered quite a luxury thing to have. You know? So I think we're going to see, yes, seismic change, huge disruption, but it doesn't all happen in one hit, and it will become increasingly invisible because it will be so embedded in the products and services that we use. This isn't about wheeling in some monstrosity of a great technological, physical beast. It looks like a search box. It looks like a chat window. It looks like a little assistant, like Clippy used to back in the day. That sort of very subtle presence of AI technologies in our daily work to make us more efficient, to reduce repetitive sort of tasks, to handle productivity. Just that alone, I think, will be really, really important. But I do think that there has not been a technology since the internet arrived in education that has had potentially such a profound effect on the fabric of community, on the culture and relationships, because schools function and thrive on relationships, right? It's all about trust. It's all about developing people. We're here for fulfilling human potential. And so we want to be able to pull the right levers to ensure that students can achieve their best and that teachers are in the best possible place to support that mission. And I think AI absolutely has a place to occupy and to hold in that mission. But I do also think that there are considerable challenges. But never up until this point have we had a technology that could fundamentally erode concept of truth or democracy, or that hasn't happened in quite this way before. So is it different to AR and VR? Yes, radically. AR and VR was something that was kind of, well, how can we shoehorn a place in a curriculum into schools with this technology? And I have been a bit of a stubborn old so-and-so about this, because my view is that consistently, yes, the technology is lovely. What a nice, interesting, immersive experience this is, but show me the curriculum content that means that every head of department in this school is going to say, yes, I will gladly substitute this for this new thing. It doesn't exist. It isn't there. It's a nice to have bonus thing that makes a lovely marketing image on the school website. Beyond that, no, it's not there yet. And so I think AR and VR haven't taken their place, partly because they can't deliver on the content. This is about that sort of form factor versus, the actual function. And the form factor is not enough. We need functionality. And that's where AI, I think, can add tremendous value for us in education. And it's about us as educators having the agency to not only select good tools, but to help define that marketplace and to push hard against the tide of commercial interests, particularly those who want to take advantage of the vast, rich sources of data that schools represent, and to say, what we want is this, and we want to do it this way, and we want you to prioritize that, rather than just, oh, what's that thing? We'll just sign that. We need to be really active and discerning about it in much the same way that we would want our students to be.
Thank you, Laura. I mean, it's an awful lot to unpick there, and I still really do want to go back to that change management conversation too. But
Sure.
that idea you shared there as well about, and it's something that's a real North Star for me as well, actually, is just because you can do something with technology doesn't necessarily mean that you should, and so having that little bit of critical sort of salt to try and make sure the things actually land right, and you are doing the right things to support and promote learning and all these different things is super important. No, absolutely. And so you touched on the idea of snake oil in what you were sharing there.
I may have done.
We've got a big event coming up in January. It's the largest edtech event in the world, which is the Bett show. And so I just wondered, things we were talking about snake oil. I mean, we often have that Bett bingo thing, don't we? Where what keywords are going to drop into every single presentation and speech at Bett this year, right? Obviously, AI is going to be a big conversation there. I wondered if you've. I mentioned the sort of phrase North Star, and I've got a lot of North Stars that's help guide my thinking. But for those viewers, and because this is about insights, right? this series. So what insights can you share with listeners and viewers, Laura? What sort of insights can you share around North Stars? Because, I mean, every edtech product and their dog is going to somehow manage to find some way to shoehorn the word AI or AI functionality. I mean, you and I have had conversations for a long time about companies that have been saying for a long time they are the AI product and all the rest of it, when it might not necessarily actually be AI behind the scenes anyway, right?
Well,
But
that was going to be one of the first things I mentioned. Well, it's funny that you and I both are aligned on this. I'm ready to dive in if you're happy to let me.
Yeah, go on. So, like a champion thoroughbred, ready to pounce and hit off at the beginning of the race, Laura. What North Stars should people be considering when they're talking to edtechs at Bett?
So I think I have something like 5-ish. We'll start with 5, but it could end up with 6. The first is impact. I think that teachers should be asking, where is the impact of what you are proposing in this product, service, subscription? And by the way, we're going to see increasing numbers of these things appearing as subscription-based services. They won't, and so I would talk about timeframes in a minute. But first of all, where's the impact on young people? And you will get a lot of marketing drivel about personalization. And I would say, watch out for that as this totemic phrase that lots of people will be using to market their products, because it means almost nothing when diluted in the mix. And what we actually want to hear about is, tell me about accessibility, tell me about adaptive processes, tell me about data. That's what we want to hear about, right? Not just, oh, yes, it helps you personalize learning. Well, what does that mean? Fundamentally, for a teacher delivering their lessons to 30 kids or more at a time, you want to hear about how does this tool help with that job and what's impact it's having on the students. So impact, take care with personalization. And actually, if we're talking about accessibility, if we're talking about differentiation, love it. Tell me more. If we're just talking about, oh, well, so-and-so can change the color of their avatar. Really? Come on now. So that's the first thing. Then I would say, can you ask the salesperson to actually define, where is the AI, please? Because I guarantee there will be lots of platforms claiming that there is this sort of magical AI in the mix somewhere, and it's powered by AI or something along those lines. And it may well be quite poorly defined. It may well be quite unclear. I think asking the question, so where is it? What has it been trained on? What are the outcomes? What are the risks, and how are you mitigating them? Those are the things I would like to be hearing. Where is the AI? Definitely second on the list. The third is about data and privacy. So I would love to hear reassurances from companies that are selling us AI-based platforms, that the data that the students in your school are generating is not something that they are selling, reselling, etc., because that concerns me, that ethically there is this grey area about content going into AI, and then where does it go after that? Is it being used for training data? Are my students then is their information going to be then part of the model? If so, how is that being managed? The data and privacy pieces, and then obviously I'm going to talk about safeguarding and has it been robustly tested in terms of manipulation? Because especially anything that claims it's free, if you are not paying for something, if it's like a freemium model, then you are essentially the product, as we know from the attention economy and social media age. But not only are you the product, you are inviting passive or active manipulation into the life of the user. And as teachers who are putting our children in front of these tools potentially, or our staff, it's our job to ensure that that is not taken lightly. So I would be deeply suspicious of anything that claims there's lots and lots of functionality that comes for free, because good things coming for free should set alarm bells. That's like red flag territory. I think in terms of snake oil, the other final thing I would say is anyone who claims that there's some sort of guru is probably, unless they are an academic like of the caliber of somebody like Professor Rose Luckin, they're probably talking out of their behind. Just for the simple fact that this is a technology that has not existed in the educational space for much more than a year, and developing expertise in this space is something that takes time, effort, energy, research, peer-reviewed double-blind studies. How many of those have you done? So let's be realistic and have some healthy skepticism about anyone who says that they are the one person who can unlock this magical thing for you and decode it and all the rest of it. I think we need to see through that quite clearly. I'm going to pause there, Mark, for your thoughts, because I realise I've talked a bit.
It's all good, Laura, and thank you for telling it how it is. You and I obviously have known each other for some time, and one of the reasons that is we do share similar views on lots and lots of these different things, and I could unpick an awful lot of different things in there, but I wanted to just you mentioned the flip of a phrase that we also have talked about a few times, which is the nearly there yet thing, and we could dive into the things around those people in our space who claim to be an expert in something which has only really been in the public fora for a very short space of time, who haven't had the experiences like yourself, who've been working in the space and leading in the space for a considerable amount of time. But I won't go down that rabbit hole, because that's not
it's
what
not necessary. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. But the nearly there yet thing is so interesting. Can we talk about
insights?
That?
Yeah, that's where I want to go to next, Laura. So to set the scene, you know. I talked about the technologies, and we've seen and heard the promise of technology being an amazing thing for so many years, not just years, decades. And so it does beg the question, are we nearly there yet? Well, you and I have talked previously about Bloom's Two Sigma problem and all these different things. So I wondered, Laura, whether you could answer the question, when it comes to technology that can have an impact on learning, that can facilitate a teacher being still able to be the sage on the stage, but more easily that guide on the side. When it comes to AI in education, Laura, are we nearly there yet?
No. Okay, so I think I'm going to go a step further than you might expect here, Mark, and say there is no there. And this quest for doneness is misguided, because I don't think we're ever going to be done. Technology is a constantly evolving landscape. There is always going to be shift. There is always going to be innovation and change. And it will follow, kind of peaks and troughs. And there'll be times when things accelerate and times when things feel more stable. But fundamentally, there is no done. And so folks who are leading on digital in school will have been working on these things. I certainly have for like over 10 years. And there is always the new thing. There is always the next big whatever. And so the quest for doneness, I think, is unhelpful, because it kind of implies this idea that we need to have resilience against change for a fixed period of time. And let's be honest, resilience in and of itself is a state of struggle, and it's uncomfortable. But we can do it for a short period of time and then recover and then do it again. But we can't keep people in a perennial state of discomfort with technology. That's really unhealthy, especially if you're constantly promising that there's going to be this kind of calm after the storm. It's like setting someone off on a 100-meter sprint but keeping them going for a marathon. We can't do that. So instead, we need to expect it to be a marathon and then some, because there is always going to be more. And so in my view, we need to be aiming for the thing beyond resilience, which is, I think, something like equanimity, where you are at a calm state of even keel, agile enough to keep rolling with the punches, happy enough and settled with the tools that you're using to be able to keep using them, but, quite comfortable switching up to the next thing when the time is right. That state of equanimity should be the goal, and we should let go of doneness as an accomplished thing. There isn't going to be doneness, and this evolution is something we have to get comfortable with. So that kind of reminds me, is it Alvin Toffler who said, the illiterates of the 21st century are the people who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. That state is going to be very much our normal, and our most successful staff and students will be the ones who are absolutely comfortable in that.
So I'm going to come back at you a little bit, because, and this is why I love our conversations, Laura, right? Because it is about taking, and another thing I would say that I love about conversations, Laura, is that you always manage to take the conversation a little bit further as well. So thank you for that. I think anyone, though, worth their salt in your sort of previous roles leading on digital in a school, or anyone who leads full stop, and actually anyone in the classroom recognizes that learning is never ever done. I mean, if we think about, we've talked before about how to get good responses out of using a generative AI tool, for example. And it's
Mm,
important to recognise that it's all an iterative process. I
absolutely.
guess maybe recognizing iteration. My question wasn't as good as it could have been. Maybe just sort of tying into that catchy "Are we nearly there yet?" thing, because I think you're definitely
Mm,
right. But certainly, and maybe this is a better question to ask, because and there has been, and certainly the pandemic helped an awful lot with this, didn't Laura, about improving confidence and competence and cognizance with technology.
mm,
But with the work I do outside of net support, an awful lot of that is still about raising the bar, about
yeah,
getting that level playing field of people being able to be effective at a level where they are confident, competent, cognizant within the context of your school,
yeah,
all these different things. Because surely, until you get to that point, maybe that is the place that is there.
right.
But you're absolutely right, though. It is something which will and does need to be iterative, because technology won't stop advancing, will it?
Absolutely not. And the things that we might have trained staff on 5 years ago will feel really old hat in so many ways. In even now and certainly moving forwards. So we need to teach, and I think this partly comes down to whether you teach people tools or whether you teach them principles. And sort of strategies, as it were. So I'm very in favour of giving people the confidence to experiment and play, for example. And in lots of schools, especially high performing ones, that's a really tricky thing. There are lots of colleagues who are super conscientious and so dedicated to doing an amazing job for their students that they are cautious about changing things for fear that it will not have the positive impact that they hope. And equally, there is no time to waste on things going wrong. So they're like, well, why would I change
Mm.
my practice? So, it's right that people should be skeptical of jazz hands, in technology senses. But I think the idea of doneness is a tricky one. Now, what you're talking about with raising the bar is, I kind of think about it as in terms of floors and ceilings. So raising the floor, if you like, and bringing everyone up to a level at which you can function really effectively, deliver high quality lessons, communicate well, manage your digital stuff. All of that is super valuable. Is it static? No, it's not, because the floor that we're raising today will have shifted upwards further in next year and probably the year after that. But where we need people to be today is you've got to be able to send an email with this, you've got to be able to make a calendar arrangement there, you've got to share a document, whatever. So those particular skills, I think upskilling somebody to raise the floor and bring them into alignment with your kind of, it's like a minimum viable product, isn't it? But only in terms of people, like that minimum level of functionality in digital space. I think that's a core part of what we should be delivering for teachers, for sure, but also for students too, because we can't make the assumption that the young people we work with automatically have those skills. And while I'm a big fan of computer science in the curriculum, one of the things that getting rid of ICT did was it massively de-skilled young people, and just in terms of navigating their digital stuff, and they don't automatically know those things. So actually, there's a collective effort that is needed in articulating
Mm.
how we use technology well. And so, is that about raising the bar? Yes, it definitely is. Is that a single moment? No, it's a continual journey.
Because there's no such thing as a digital native either, right? So,
Load of
I'm going to
old
bring.
plants. Can I
I'm,
say plants?
I'm going to.
It's a load of old plants. It's a lazy metaphor, and I get really. I'm already on it. I'm not even letting you finish your question, because anyone who says it gets an earful from me about what we talk about is naive experts. Sure, I'll accept that there is such a thing as a naive expert who may well be expert in using a particular slice of technology in a
TikTok.
particular way. But they, for example, right, can do a beautiful TikTok transition, has no clue how to make a good life decision because they don't have the moral and societal frameworks to function within. So digital natives is unhelpful and lazy, and I would merrily ban it. If this was Room 101, it would be right in there.
So I'm going to do what all skilled interviewers do, and I'm going to bring our conversation full circle, right back to
Mm,
something we started talking about right at the beginning, which is about, and actually the conversation has gravitated itself here because change management, for all the amazing things that technology can do and does do, the determining factor about whether any kind of technology implementation, be it AI, AR, VR, interactive whiteboards, any of it, is actually effective. It's about people and
Mhm.
change management, because you can have all the best technology, you can have the best Wi-Fi, the best infrastructure, the best laptop, the best whatever it is, right? But that issue between the device and the chair, how do we go about, Laura, making it so that we can actually, because again, it's all very well and good having pockets of brilliance and your evangelists and all these different people, but what you want
Yeah.
again is to shift that standard deviation, towards the positive, because
Mm.
there's a bell curve, isn't there, right?
Yeah.
So how do we go about doing that, Laura? How do we make that work in schools? What advice would you give to people who are leading on digital and teaching and learning?
Good. Okay. Well, I think that there's some interesting starting points, and it doesn't start with the device. You need to go back up the road a little bit before we even start thinking about devices, and start with principles of what is the aim here, what is the goal, what is the school like, what do we want to achieve in the school, and what do we want for the young people. So you begin with those goals, and then you need to think about the core business that you want to deliver and how you want to deliver it, and bring in at that point your visionaries, your futurists, your digital technologists, those people who are going to bring expertise into the leadership question around the navigating the art of the possible, right? So helping to marry up the problems that need solving and the aims that we want to achieve with what technology can do to support those goals and help transform the picture. And that point is when you start writing your shopping list, not before. And then after the shopping list, when there is, you've got quite a lot of work to do on engagement and, kind of upskilling and creating resilience. But at that point, then you need to consider, well, how do we review? How do we monitor? How do we evaluate? And then how do we iterate? So there's this whole beautiful virtuous loop, essentially, that kind of works through there. And there is a place for leadership, and there's a place for technological expertise, and there's a place for teaching and learning. All of those things need to be part of it, because this is a complex, holistic picture that is all about people, and moving people, shifting the dial, if you like, shifting the needle in terms of practice and routine and habit takes some compelling thinking. And that honestly, there are some great levers to pull about quality of practice, impact for students. But one of the ones that we should be thinking about with AI is workload. If there is a conversation to be had that is transformative at this stage with AI right now, it should be, I think, how can I save my teachers an hour a week? Or something equally, it might sound really mundane, but if we can start by, and I've had this conversation with some of the schools I'm working with in a consultancy capacity, workload is a nightmare. And I'm like, so your teacher's still taking minutes in meetings? Or yeah, somebody has to take the minutes, and they tend to just write them up and send them out by hand. I was like, how long does that take? Well, probably about an hour. I'm like, right, okay. Let's talk about taking minutes. It's a tiny thing, but in the fabric of the week of that teacher, it's a thing on their to-do list that doesn't need to be there. Let's give them that time back. Boom. What's the AI tool that's going to best suit it? Well, there are gazillions, and you choose the right one. But that I think is the way to start thinking. Okay, I've got a workload problem. Let's look at that sliced up. Taking the principles into action there is starting by saying teacher time is precious. Teacher time is most impactful when it's spent on planning amazing lessons and sorting out that whole loop around feedback and reporting and making sure that the marking and that whole piece with the relationship with the student is good. Let's prioritize that. Amazing. Minute taking. So that's just one small example, I think, of how you can think with a sort of visionary lens on the problems that you want to solve and applying technology well. And for me, that is about how you can develop trust as a school leader by saying, I value your time and your professionalism, and this is what I'm doing to make that even more precious and more favored in terms of how we manage time in this place, rather than just expecting time to be perennially elastic, which it very clearly is not.
Right. So look, we're almost out of time, Laura, but we've been quite verbose in our. Can you ever be quite verbose? We've talked a fair amount, and we've covered an awful lot of topics. But I'm going to take you back to your Teach Meet days. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. We've got about 5 minutes left, and so what I'd like you to do, please, is give me a minimum of three. And knowing you'll probably give me 30 in the next sort of minute or so. Three things that AI tools that teachers should be taking the time to have a little look at that can help in some of the areas you've sort of shared about around workload and being more efficient, and maybe feedback and assessment, and there are so many areas, aren't there? But your timer starts virtually now.
Okay, amazing. So my first tool that comes to mind, which is the first one I recommend to people who have never tried an AI tool before, is to go to magicschool.ai, because it creates all of these options for you and gives you some wonderful, handy things like synopsis on a YouTube video. The second one is I really enjoy Adobe Firefly for creating visuals, and I find the output on that to be creatively gorgeous, lots of fabulous creative prompts, really handy in lots of different things from slides to creative writing work. And then finally, I don't pay for a ChatGPT Plus subscription, so I like using Claude when I want to upload a document and analyze it. So, for example, if you've got a huge PDF document and you want to create some questions on it, something like that, you can upload the PDF to Claude and it will do that for you beautifully. So those are my three that I would recommend. I'm going to stop there just to surprise you.
Look at you! You didn't give me a bonus one. Well, give me a bonus one. Go on, one more, Laura. Bonus one.
I know it might not be very glamorous, but I'm fortunate enough to have access to Bing Chat, the enterprise version where I work. And honestly, I'm so impressed with its creative mode. It's brilliant. So I really enjoy the scope to condense large pieces of text into smaller summaries. That alone is incredibly useful. So yeah, add 10 things in from different sources and make me a summary out of these 10 things in one space. Brilliant. That's so handy for the kinds of work that I'm doing at the moment. So yeah, it's unglamorous, but yeah, I'm here for Bing.
Brilliant stuff. So magicschool.ai, we had Firefly, we had Claude, which is, I believe, from Perplexity, and then Bing Chat. Laura, brilliant conversation. Lots and lots and lots of takeaways. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to join me on this but almost fireside chat conversation on Insights with NetSupport. If people want to get in touch with you, Laura, then we've got your details scrolling across the bottom of the screen. But for those of you that are listening rather than viewing, if you want to get in touch with Laura, then you can do so. Just simply go to bit.ly/ask Laura Knight. That's Knight like of the round table rather than day and night. And if you go to berkhamsted.com/consultancy-at-berkhamsted, you can find out more about Laura and her services there as well. Laura, fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. I can't wait until I get to see you IRL, as the kids say, who are definitely not digital natives. So hopefully get to see you very, very soon indeed. But for now, thank you to you, Laura. Thank you to you for listening. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, which is somewhere down there below and behind my microphone. For now, until the next episode of Insights with NetSupport, thank you to you for joining us and look forward to seeing you in the very near future. Take care. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Bye.